She was this gun-toting, whiskey-drinking broad.
The super epic fucking broad.
She was a pioneer in the industry.
She's also so famous and so controversial.
So controversial.
So she's kind of a big fucking deal.
Her story is so incredible. She belongs on this podcast because she's a broad you should know. Hello and welcome to Broads You Should Know, the podcast about amazing and noteworthy women from history. I am your host, Sarah Gorski, and I am here today, my listeners, with a brand new guest for you. I have brought you Miss Amelia Hammel. Hi, Amelia.
Hi, it's so nice to be here. I'm excited. I really am.
I'm fucking excited. We can swear on this podcast. I forgot to tell you that, Amelia. I swear all the time.
I love that.
Amelia, what can you tell our audience about you? Who are you?
Well, I'm obviously amazing. That's very clear. I'm a screenwriter. I'm a comedian. I am, just your go-to girl on so many things. I've lived in Los Angeles for almost 16 years now, which is terrifying.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
That's almost twice as long as me.
It's a long time to live in La La Land.
Amelia, when I first met you, I had this vibe on you that was like, she's a total radical feminist just like I am. Is that true?
That's so true. It's so true. To the point that my dad is always like, boys don't ever like feminists. And I'm like, I'm fine with that.
You know what? I'm fine with it too. I had this hilarious conversation with my dad the other day where I'm trying to remember now what he said about me. He meant it in the best way. And he was like, well, you get really, excited about these topics. I was like, yep, I do. I fucking do. Oh, bless their hearts. We love our dads.
I know. They didn't know they were going to have feminist daughters. It is what it is.
Weirdly enough, I do feel like I'm partially a feminist, because of the way my dad raised me, but he wasn't trying to do that. It's just what the result was.
Well, I was definitely raised by a feminist. I mean, I was raised by a single mom. My mom was amazing. And then my dad was sort of that weekend dad who would kind of swoop in and be like, why aren't you waiting on the boys? And I'm like, because they're my same age. And if they can't figure that out, that's on them.
Yeah, no shit.
Even when I was little, I was like, grow up.
Oh, well, that's not how my dad was at all. He was always like, you can do it. Let me teach you how to do X, Y, Z. And I'm like, great. And then other people are like, oh, you can do. I just changed my wiper blades on my car. I was like, yes, feminism. Anyway, I'm totally distracted now from our main topic. I'm so excited you're here, Amelia, for your first episode. I think probably the first of many.
I hope so. I am so excited.
And you're here in February, which, as I said last week, listeners, is one of my favorite months because we get to celebrate and uplift Black history together with Black History Month.
Absolutely. And the second you said that, I mean, you were there. I just started spouting out names. I was like, there's so many amazing people.
I was like, yes, that one. And then I was like, okay, now you just have to pick which one you want to cover. So I'm really excited for the broad you brought today because I have not covered her. She is one of the, I feel like most iconic Black broads in America. And sometimes I avoid the ones that are so popular because I'm worried I'm going to mess up their story. So I haven't done her yet. And I'm so excited you brought her. And to be honest, I don't know much about her. So tell the audience, who did you bring today?
I mean, so Harriet Tubman was the architect of the Underground Railroad. And yes. I think I've been getting a little bit feisty about her lately because, number one, they're trying to teach people in Florida that slavery was good for the African American community, which we all know is not true.
Wait, that's happening?
Yes, in Florida. He's taking stuff out of the textbooks and putting in but look at all the skills they learned. And it's
I knew they were taking out stuff from the textbooks. I didn't realize they were inserting.
Yeah, they're inserting absolute
bullshit.
I mean, just exactly. Absolute bullshit. It's just but look at all the trades they learned. And then they got to be in America. It would have taken them so long to get to America if we hadn't kidnapped them and forced them in slave labor.
We're talking about DeSantis specifically, right?
Absolutely. It's mostly in Florida, but it's happening kind of all around where people are trying to really whitewash history and pretend that wasn't what it was. But the other thing about Harriet Tubman that I am fascinated with is how many people don't actually know what the Underground Railroad was.
Yes.
Because it was such an important part of it. And so I just wanted to talk about her today, about the Underground Railroad and about what an amazing feminist she was.
Oh my
Because for
God,
the
I'm so
time,
excited.
she was like the feminist queen. And that just gives me goosebumps every time.
Yeah. And so she wasn't very well liked, right, by white people because she was both Black and a feminist and an abolitionist. She was like the
I mean,
big.
I don't think people of her time really knew about her. I think she sort of became more of a
Really?
cult thing later. She was
Huh.
born, now they don't actually know what year she was born, but after
Hmm.
like looking through old records and things of the people who owned her at the time, they think she was born in 1822 in Maryland.
Okay. Okay.
She was obviously born to a slave couple. And there
Mhm.
have also been a lot of reports that her father may have actually been white, that she might have been the
Mm.
product of rape. Now, that's never been substantiated, so I don't want to like start pretending like I know, but it's entirely possible at that time. You
Well,
know,
yeah, because
that's kind of
the
what
enslaved
happened.
people were considered property and they weren't considered to have any rights.
Absolutely. So she used
Oh
to
my
get
God.
beat up a lot when she was a child because of her strong spirit. And at one point, they actually threw like a tin, like they sort of explain it in different ways, but some sort of like a tin cylinder or something. I don't want to say a keg, but maybe something along the lines of a
Ugh.
small keg, and they hit her directly in the head.
What?
And after
Like as a
that,
kid?
yeah, she was 6, I think.
What the
She was like
fuck?
6 years old, and they were like beating her up, and somebody thought it would be fun to throw this at her head.
Is
And
this
after
like the
that,
slaveholders? Is this like
yeah, I'm
the
sure it was just like a round table of disgusting white people being like, "Whoa, this is amazing." Um,
Jesus?
but after that, they said she was brain damaged. But after that, she became incredibly religious and
Hmm.
starting having what she called visions. And she thought
Okay.
that, God was talking to her. And at that point, she said that she was very religious. A lot of the slaves were. I mean, they needed hope.
For fuck's sake.
So,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, obviously, you're living the absolute worst version of being a human. Of course, you need hope. And
Yeah.
so she believed that God had told her that her destiny was to free the slaves. And so, as she got older, herself and two of her younger brothers actually escaped at one point. There was actually, I saw like a reproduction or I don't know what it was, an old picture of the posters they put up everywhere. They offered
Oh.
$100 for each of them.
And
So,
did you say what state this was in? Where was she at when she
well,
was
she
growing
was in
up?
Maryland at that point.
Maryland.
Then she
Okay.
escaped to Pennsylvania, I believe.
Oh.
And there were posters everywhere where they were offering $100, which now, at least according to what I read, would be the equivalent of about $3,500 each to
Wow.
return them. So they
How
would.
old were they at that point? They were still pretty
They
young.
were all in their 20s. She was about
Oh, 20.
27. Both of her brothers were younger, so they were about 25 and 22, something like that.
Okay.
And they were all returned. And then she got away again, and that is when she really became the mastermind and the orchestrator of the Underground Railroad, because she made it her
Oh.
mission to go back and free all of her family members.
Wow.
And so she created this entire network of people who were sympathetic. Just like in World War II, we're all much more, educated
Mm.
in that, where people would hide you in their basement or their attic or whatever, and they would help you sneak. They'd hide you in the back of their carriage and they would take you somewhere. And she was able to actually extract 70 slaves using this
70.
system, just all on her own.
With like she had just like networked and found the safe
She
people who
networked,
were
she
willing to
found
do it.
sympathetic people, exactly. And, I'm sure that she had a lot of help and all of those things. But that was really what she did. So she was able to actually get her family out. In total, they say it was about 70 slaves. And then the Civil War started. And she
Mm.
volunteered. She worked as a nurse and as I mean, oh gosh, what did they call her? Wasn't a spy, but she would like go ahead and sort of check things out before the troops would move to make sure that they knew what was going on. And
Yeah.
so, and
A scout.
in
I think
that,
there's scout, right?
yeah, a scout, exactly. I guess that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And then with that, she was able to help extract 700 more.
700 more in addition to the
By
70 she did.
helping the Union soldiers in certain attacks and all of these things. Now,
Yeah.
the part of her that I find almost the most fascinating is that when she was done with that, even with illnesses and all those things, when she was feeling well enough, she said, okay, well, we're taking care of that. So now let's work on women's rights. And
Ha.
she went out and actually was helping get women rights.
Was
She
this
worked,
post-abolition? This was post-Civil War, post-abolition,
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
so like later on.
And she
Wow.
was actually, I mean, she was a suffragette.
Oh my God. How come I don't know that? What the
Because
fuck?
nobody wants to talk about her. And I think that the most frustrating thing that, at least in recent times, was that a few years ago, they actually voted to replace Andrew Jackson on the $20 bill with a picture of Harriet Tubman, which I thought was amazing.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, it just sort of got lost in the shuffle.
Oh my
So when I was
gosh.
Googling today to sort of see what they were saying, the most recent update that I could find was from 2022 when they said that they were shooting for 2030.
2030. Why does it take so long? Wait, wasn't Andrew Jackson an asshole? Am I
Of
remembering
course, yeah,
correctly?
he owned slaves. He did all sorts. I mean, not that
Yeah.
I'm sure you can find garbage on most of
I
our
mean, many of our founding fathers were in
had
fact slave owners. We
slaves,
know
you
this.
know. I mean,
Yes.
the whole what's the word I'm looking for? Like fable of Washington's teeth being wood is absolute crap. Like all of his teeth were actually teeth that were pulled out of perfectly healthy slaves and made into dentures just for him.
I think I did know that, and I
Don't think,
and
yeah,
I
I don't think
disconnected it in my brain because it's so disgusting.
it's just gross. You know what I mean? So you
Ugh.
can find some garbage on all of our presidents. But yeah, Jackson, I mean, he was not the best dude. He didn't think slavery was a bad thing. So they had decided that they were going to do that. They mocked it up. It looks amazing. It's this very cool, very badass picture of her.
Oh, I want to look it up.
And then it's just fizzled. And so I really kind of want to like start something up because I think she absolutely 100% deserves to be a huge part of American history because she did so many amazing things, not only for the slave community, but for the, just women in general. Like
Oh, I'm seeing a bunch of mock-ups. There's like a bunch of them out
and they're
there.
amazing. Like, look how good they look.
She's so much better than Andrew Jackson.
Absolutely. You know what I mean? It's a very distinguished picture. She's got her little hat on. She's just like, she looks so good. So I'm not really sure. Like the line that they gave in one of the articles was that they needed to put more security measures into it to make sure that
Into the
nobody could
bill.
copy it.
Oh, okay.
So
Like they're
put
not
all those
already doing
security
that with the
measures.
Jackson one.
Exactly. Like, and I'm like, okay, but does that really take like over a decade?
So wait, I have questions. I have questions about her. So what did her kind of religious like fervor, like that whole visionary aspect, did that go throughout her whole life, or was that kind of like more of an inciting incident for like
No,
what
I
led
think
her?
that was really kind of what drove her. She really felt a connection with God and just that was her journey. Like
Wow.
to her being hit in the head with that, it was some sort of a metal thing. And once again, we
Yeah.
weren't really clear on what it was, but that was her inciting incident to just be awakened to what her journey was on Earth. And she really did follow it through her whole life. I mean, she was a feminist. She lived to be, she lived until like 1913 in New York.
Wow. How old did that make her? I can't do the math
Uh,
with the top of my. You said she was born in which year? 1913 is when
she
she
was
died.
18, so she would have been 91.
Oh my gosh, that's so old for that time period.
Yeah. And
And
like
for
if
a
you
woman who
look up
spent some of her
her,
life
she had two
enslaved.
husbands. If you look them up, they're fascinating, specifically her second husband.
What's their
Um,
story? Were they?
well, I mean, they were also activists.
Huh.
You know,
Wow.
like she met them throughout this and was like, if you're not on board with my plan, then we're not, you know. It's just
Yeah.
very empowering. And she's somebody that I really believe that we should be studying in
Was she
more.
like? Did she work at all with some of the other bigger feminists of the time period, like popularity wise, that we have heard of more, or was she kind of was Black feminism like a totally separate?
I think it was a totally separate thing, honestly, for the
Ugh,
most part. You know, I mean,
what a
look at it
bummer.
even now. I think one of the most fascinating things that came out of the pandemic was watching Black Lives Matter happen
Mm-hmm.
and having Black men be like, oh, whoa, whoa, ladies, stay in your lane. Like, let's get
Mm-hmm.
us up and then we'll bring you in later. And then you go over to, you know, Me Too movement, and all the white women were like, whoa, 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 ladies of color, stay in your lane. This is more about us than it is about you.
Well, not all. Well, I should say not all.
Well, of
Not all
course,
women.
that's not true,
That's a terrible thing to say. Not all women.
but like watching that was actually really fascinating to me, because in my mind I'm like, we're looking at one specific group that keeps get pushed aside, and it's always women of color.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
always women.
I'd like to think that intersectional feminism is becoming more widespread and more understood by a lot of more progressive groups, at least.
I mean, I would like to think
Uh,
that too, and maybe it is, but it's not happening as fast as we would like it to.
oh
I
my
would.
God, definitely not. And we covered
Anyway.
listeners, you might remember way back. Oh my gosh. I think it was Chloe maybe did an episode on Melina Abdullah, the Angelino, an LA woman who she helped found Black Lives Matter LA. So that
Oh,
was
sure,
like,
sure, sure.
man, those were the days in the pandemic too. That was like when Black Lives Matter was kind of, it hadn't just started kicking off, but I feel like it got so much more national attention then.
Yeah. But it was just interesting to me to watch that happen, because it really was both movements in a time that should have been exciting for all of us,
Yeah.
pushing one group aside, and it was both of them. You know what I mean? It was like, what is happening? And so I think she was a little bit alone in her feminism,
Mm.
and a little bit alone in just her core belief that slavery was wrong and it was her duty to do something about it.
Was she ever involved like at the like I feel like now she's widely known to be somebody who like helped push forward abolition and make that happen. But was she actually involved like on the political level, like with some of the legislation and the politicians who made that happen? Or was she really just kind of an island saving folks from enslavement? Like, is that
I
more
think
really?
for the most part, she was an island. I mean, it was really just kind of her on her own little rogue mission. She may have
Mm,
tried to, but I can't imagine anyone would have listened to her in the 1800s. You know what I mean? Even the most progressive people at that time would have been, why are we listening to an ex slave who escaped multiple times and
oh my
created
gosh.
this whole thing to get people out? Now, she was a nurse for the Union Army. She did all sorts of amazing things.
So
But
this might be a totally ignorant question, and so if it is, I'm sorry, everybody. But is so the Underground Railroad, was it only her, like literally kind of her pathway from where her family was to Maryland, or was it like a? I had thought it was like widespread throughout the country. Is
I
that
mean,
is
it
that accurate?
definitely was widespread in that she was moving people from Maryland and sort of that area all the way up to Pennsylvania. Um, but I mean, I'm not no expert by any stretch of the imagination. I highly encourage people to look her up because she's fascinating. And
Yeah.
I just didn't have time to read 50 books this week.
What are you
Um,
talking about? You don't have time to read 50 books a
I
week?
know I have a job. It's ridiculous.
I know. I have
Um,
a literal stack of books to be read on
oh,
amazing broads that sit unread many
but it
weeks.
wasn't just her. I mean, you need to keep in mind, I don't know if you or any of the listeners watched The Handmaid's Tale,
Oh
but it's
yes,
very much like what they have on there. And that is basically like someone brings you to house A and you hide in their barn. And then
right.
somebody else comes and takes you to house B where you hide in their attic, and then somebody else puts you in the back of a wagon and hides you under a bunch of hay and takes you to a different state and then drops you off in a field. And then,
Right.
you know what I mean?
And then a carriage comes pick you up and
Exactly. Like, it's a very complicated sort of a, you know.
You know, obviously at the time they didn't publicize anyone involved with it. It was like a big secret, right? But like now looking back, can they track like who all was a part of it besides Harriet? Like obviously she was like the
I don't know that they would have been able to do that no matter what, because it's not like people would have admitted to it even later in their lives.
I know.
You know what I mean? True. Like even after slavery was abolished, it's not like all of a sudden we became a non-racist country. So,
if only things would be so different.
You probably still could have been prosecuted in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? You could have been prosecuted for kidnapping. They could argue that maybe the person didn't want to go or whatever, you know.
Or even just prosecuted by like the people that you live around. Like
absolutely. So I don't know that there's any way to do that. I'm sure that there are books that go into way more detail than I've been able to do, but it was just always a fascinating thing to me that she just took it upon herself and said, this is my mission and I'm going to go find the people that will help me. And she did. And she saved hundreds, if not even more.
Like what's incredible to me is that I don't imagine she had like any resources. Like she had escaped enslavement herself. And she made it her mission, but she wasn't like a trust fund baby who like, you know, could bribe everybody and like make these things. Like I imagine what it must have been like, and her just literally being like a master networker of like connecting with people and figuring out really quickly like who is a safe person, who's a trustworthy person and who's not, because only one person in the chain breaks it apart, right? Like all it takes is like one person like thinking to the cops and shit, and then the whole thing gets taken down, right? Which is probably also why people didn't know what your next steps. I feel like there's ways I'm like
that's why they also don't tell you exactly. That's exactly why you don't know what all the steps are, is because then even if they catch Joe can't torture him. All he knows is he's dropping somebody off in the middle of a field. He doesn't know what the next step is. You know.
Yeah. But then someone was in charge of all of it, and it was Harriet.
Yeah. And so I want her on the $20 bill like today. Like I really want everybody to just like put Harriet on the $20 bill now, and
like our senators and shit.
Mail it to every politician that they can find an address for.
We should, listeners. We should do that. That would be good.
She's so important. And who wants to look at Andrew Jackson? He looks like, I don't know. I mean, our
dollar bills are filled with fucking white men, and this country was not built only by the labor of white men. In fact, literally, they did the least of the labor. I feel like safe to say.
Exactly. So I don't know, but I think that, you know, I remember when that was announced and I got really excited, and then it just kept fizzling. And now, I mean, I can barely find anybody who even has talked about it in years.
I will have to say, I know this is like a non-serious segue, but I do really, really love Wanda Sykes' Harriet Tubman on History of the World.
Wow,
like obviously that's like very comedic, but it was nice to like see that. So like that show is like filled with like, you know, it's like, I feel like it's a lot of white men and a lot of Jewish men in history, because that's what history is all about. And then, you know, at least they got Harriet Tubman in there, and Wanda Sykes is just hilarious and brilliant. And I could watch Wanda Sykes do anything pretty much.
I know. She just cracks me up. But it was funny because, I mean, there's no way that Harriet could have been that sassy, but the idea that she could have been is amazing.
I mean, you don't think she could have been that sassy?
I mean, no, not in those times. I mean, she could have been like a strong-willed woman, which she obviously was. Well, but I don't know that she was like joking around even with the white people that were.
Well, not joking, but certainly like I think bold and sassy to get things done. Like you can't get this done by like, you can't get,
or even talk people into trying to leave. That had to have been
Yeah.
hard because they knew that the punishment for that was either severe beatings or death,
Yeah.
you know? So that was a huge deal back then.
Wow. Man, she was a
So
badass. She's
I
a
know.
great broad, Amelia. Thank you for bringing her today.
Yeah, I mean, I just got excited and I really want her on the $20 bill. I may just start drawing her on.
Like over Andrew Jackson, like
Pretty much. Just like put a hat and just like do some shading and you know,
we need
and
a
just get
woman on the $20 bill, and it needs to be a Black woman.
and it needs to be
That's where I'm
Harriet
standing.
Tubman. It needs to
Yeah,
be Harriet
we
Tubman.
got Sacagawea on that 50-cent coin that nobody uses, but
Well,
like the
because
next
they
step
knew
is like,
nobody would use it. That's why they put her on it. The $20 bill is probably one of the most used bills in all of the United States at this
I
point.
know. Can you imagine that in circulation? Like just the impact of like, I don't know. I don't mean like maybe this sounds ridiculous, but like no, I don't think it sounds ridiculous actually. Why did I just do that? Why did I like diminish?
Yeah, don't
No,
diminish it.
can
It's
you
gonna be
imagine like little kids seeing Harriet Tubman on a $20 bill that's used all the time, and like what that like you've already seen like what happened to all those beautiful little Black girls who saw the Little Mermaid be Black and who like
oh,
it
those were
exploded their
amazing
hearts. I
videos.
just like
Like
watch those videos over and over and just like
I know.
crying over them. Like my heart just exploded. And can you just imagine? Because representation is so important. And like that's what this whole podcast is about, is making sure that these stories get told that never get
Exactly.
told.
And then at least the kids in Florida will know that they need to at least Google her, even
Oh
though
my
she's not in their
gosh.
history books.
I worry about those kids in Florida.
I
I
do
really
too.
do.
I think it's going to become like a thing later where they are held at a different place because of the education they had. Like they won't be able to get into colleges and stuff.
I'd like to think that there's some sort of Gen Z movement happening underground that I don't know about there in Florida too. So we'll see.
I mean,
We'll
listen,
see.
if I was in charge of things, a lot of things would look very different. But I have to say that I thought, at least in more naive times of my life, that we were further along than we really are. And it's disappointing every time I get proven wrong.
It's
You
so
know?
disappointing every time.
Because I'm like, really? We're going back to torches and, you know,
Yeah. Well,
sheets and
we are. We are. We fucking have neo-Nazis in Glendale, California. Like that it's something that's happening, and it's something that's even more important to talk about that's happening and not pretend like, oh, everything's fine. Let's just not, ruffle, like let's talk about it and figure out how to move forward and past it. And
absolutely. But this
get
idea,
fucking starting with Harriet Tubman on the $20
dollar
bill,
bill,
damn it.
put Harriet on the 20 and then just mail it to any politician and all the politicians, just like postcards
Yeah.
with preferably her face on them.
What about phone? Should we call too? Phone messages?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
after a while, they understand when people start calling them.
I think they do like log the issues, like how many people write in so that
Well,
like
absolutely. I mean, if we do that at my job, which, is great.
I did. I called Adam Schiff's office
Yeah.
because of the neo-Nazis in Glendale because I was disturbed by it.
Oh, absolutely.
And
We all
a human being picked up the phone and talked to me for like 15 minutes. And I was
an
like, oh my
intern
gosh.
probably, but still.
I don't think she was. I think she was a
Might have been
volunteer.
like assistant.
Because she was a little older. She wasn't like you can tell when someone's like a kid on the other.
Yeah. Hello,
She was not a
thank
kid.
you for calling Senator Schiff's place.
No, she was more mature. She was, older than us. I could tell, like in her voice,
Okay.
but she was very nice. But then I got an email that was like a cookie cutter email back, and I was like, hurrah.
Well, that's usually their response. But I honestly, if we got enough people together to just really start just like bombarding them with mail, I don't remember
Yeah.
how much stamps are anymore.
Well, you buy the forever stamp, and then it works no matter what they raise it to.
Exactly. So we just get a bunch of forever stamps, and then just like every day they just get like a new batch.
And put Harriet.
Of them.
Put Harriet at the front. Amelia, thank you for being here today, for being my guest on the pod. We're so glad to have you. I know the listeners probably are really grateful not to like have me talking at them for a full, 20 minutes again all by myself.
Well, and I hope, please, by all means, if I said anything that was incorrect in, my research on her, please, feel free.
We always should do our own research. Yes.
Yeah, everybody just like go look her up. She was just such a badass that she's always been very dear to my heart. And I remember when they decided to put her on the 20, I was just so excited. And so it really breaks my heart that they're just trying to bury her now.
Well, maybe that will not always be the case, and I will hold hope for the future because we need a broad on the $20 bill. We need a black broad on the $20 bill.
We need a badass black broad on that 20. And I will spend nothing but 20s for the rest of my life. I don't need a 5. This guy's white. I don't like.
Let's change all the dollar bills over. Let's make them all women.
They're just all different poses of Harriet Tubman. I love it.
No, different women too, but
obviously. But
well, thanks for being here, and I can't wait to have you back again.
Absolutely, looking forward to it. Thanks, everyone.
To learn more about Harriet Tubman, see some photos of her and the $20 bill that might be in our future, head on over to broadsyoushouldknow.com. While you're there, you can click on over to the About page to read more about Amelia and me. Our bios, photos, links to all our cool stuff, all right there. Are you following Broads You Should Know on social? We are on Facebook and Instagram and now YouTube at Broads You Should Know and Twitter at BYSK Podcast. Like, subscribe, comment, and if you really want to help the podcast, share an episode with your friends and family or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. That really helps new listeners to find us. To suggest a broad, fill out the form on our website or email us at broadsyoushouldknow@gmail.com. Broads You Should Know is produced by me, Sarah Gorski, and edited by Chloe Skye, with original music by Darren Callahan. Finally, if you really enjoyed hearing the story of Harriet Tubman and her amazing achievement building the Underground Railroad, then I highly recommend you check out a few of our similar broads from that time period. You can check out Bridget Biddy Mason, the LA real estate entrepreneur who sued her way to freedom, Melina Abdullah, who we talked about, who founded Black Lives Matter LA. We've got stagecoach Mary Fields, who was the gun-toting, whiskey-drinking postmistress in the West. And finally, Cathay Williams, the formerly enslaved woman who enlisted in the military to fight in the Civil War. See you next week for another Black Broad You Should Know.